this episode, we focus on a problem that can make data governance feel ineffective even when the rules look strong on paper. The controls do not match what the enterprise actually prioritizes. Beginners often hear information governance and think it is mainly about protecting data from leaks. But information governance is also about enabling the enterprise to use data confidently to run operations, comply with obligations, and make better decisions. Governance of Enterprise IT, GEIT, is the broader system that aligns technology decisions to enterprise goals and risk tolerance. So aligning information governance with GEIT means data controls are designed and enforced in a way that supports enterprise priorities instead of fighting them. If the enterprise prioritizes speed and innovation but data controls are overly rigid and unclear, people will bypass controls and create shadow copies, which increases risk. If the enterprise prioritizes compliance and trust, but data controls are inconsistent or under-enforced, leadership may believe risk is managed when it is not. The aim here is to show how aligning information governance with GEIT creates a coherent system where data controls are risk-based, priority-driven, and practical enough to be followed consistently. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A good starting point is understanding what it means for controls to match enterprise priorities, because priorities are not only goals, they are trade-offs the enterprise chooses. An enterprise might prioritize customer trust, regulatory compliance, operational resilience, rapid delivery of new services, cost optimization, or expansion into new markets, and these priorities shape what risks are acceptable and what controls are necessary. Information governance sets rules for data classification, access, retention, quality, sharing, and disposal, but these rules must reflect which outcomes matter most, or else they will feel arbitrary. Beginners sometimes assume that more control is always better, but excessive control can reduce value by making data hard to use, which encourages workarounds that create uncontrolled risk. Too little control can also reduce value because data becomes untrustworthy and unsafe, and leaders lose confidence in analytics and reporting. Aligning information governance with GEIT means controls are chosen and calibrated based on enterprise risk tolerance and strategic direction, not based on generic best practices. This alignment creates consistency because the same logic used to govern technology investments is used to govern data decisions. When the logic is shared, controls feel connected to purpose rather than imposed for their own sake. GEIT provides the framework for making trade-offs across value, risk, and constraints, and information governance should use that same framework to decide what controls are needed and where. For example, if a dataset supports critical financial reporting, the enterprise may prioritize integrity and auditability, which suggests stronger controls around change tracking, access, and retention. If a dataset supports customer personalization, the enterprise may prioritize privacy and consent, which suggests controls around permissible use, minimization, and sharing. If a dataset supports operational reliability, the enterprise may prioritize availability and recovery, which suggests controls around backups, resilience, and incident response evidence. Beginners may think these are separate governance areas, but they are connected because the enterprise's priorities determine which risks are most damaging and which controls matter most. Aligning information governance with GEIT therefore begins by mapping information assets to enterprise capabilities and outcomes, so controls can be applied where they have the highest impact. This also supports optimization, because the enterprise avoids spending time enforcing heavy controls on low-value, low-risk data while neglecting high-value, high-risk assets. When controls follow priority, governance becomes more efficient and more credible. Another critical alignment point is ensuring information governance participates in strategic planning rather than reacting after initiatives are already underway. If the enterprise launches new services, expands into new markets, or adopts new analytic initiatives without considering data governance needs, controls will be bolted on later, usually in a rushed and unpopular way. When information governance is integrated into planning, It can help leaders understand what data will be created, what obligations will apply, and what foundational governance capabilities must be strengthened first. Beginners often assume governance slows innovation, but governance can actually increase speed by preventing late-stage surprises like discovering data cannot be used due to unclear consent or discovering analytics cannot be trusted due to inconsistent definitions. Planning integration also supports realistic sequencing, such as building a data stewardship model before scaling analytics, or defining classification and handling rules before onboarding new partners who will share data. When information governance is aligned with planning cadence, data controls evolve with strategy rather than lagging behind it. This makes controls feel like part of responsible growth, not like a barrier to growth. Aligning controls to priorities also requires clear ownership and decision rights, because priorities must be translated into actionable decisions about data. Data owners and stewards are the roles that make this translation practical because they decide definitions, approve access, and resolve conflicts about use and quality. Without clear ownership, information governance cannot adapt controls to enterprise priorities because no one has authority to accept trade-offs and enforce decisions. GEIT alignment includes ensuring that data governance roles fit the broader governance model, meaning decision rights are clear and escalation paths exist. Beginners might assume governance committees can decide everything, but data decisions are frequent and must be made quickly, so ownership and stewardship provide the operational structure to keep controls aligned in real time. Owners ensure controls serve enterprise outcomes, stewards ensure controls are applied consistently, and governance bodies provide oversight and alignment to enterprise risk appetite. When ownership is clear, controls become responsive rather than rigid, because decisions can be made with context. This responsiveness is essential for matching controls to priorities as priorities shift. A common misalignment problem is when security controls are designed as one-size-fits-all rules, while enterprise priorities require nuanced control based on sensitivity and use. For example, if the enterprise prioritizes analytics and operational efficiency, overly restrictive access rules may cause teams to build shadow datasets, undermining both security and quality. If the enterprise prioritizes privacy and trust, overly permissive sharing may increase exposure and create compliance failures. Aligning information governance with GEIT means defining classification and handling rules that are clear, differentiated, and tied to business context, so teams can access what they need while still protecting what matters most. It also means defining permissible use expectations so data is not repurposed beyond its intended boundaries without review. Beginners often think data misuse is intentional, but misuse is frequently accidental, driven by unclear rules and time pressure. When controls are aligned and understandable, compliance becomes easier because people can apply rules without constant interpretation. That is how controls become practical, which is necessary for them to actually match priorities in real behavior. Quality governance is another area where alignment matters because enterprise priorities often depend on trustworthy data, and untrustworthy data can silently derail strategic decisions. If the enterprise prioritizes data-driven decision-making, then quality controls must be strong enough to support confidence, including consistent definitions, quality monitoring, and stewardship-driven correction processes. If the enterprise prioritizes speed, quality controls must still exist, but they must be designed to be efficient, such as focusing quality effort on critical data elements and using clear thresholds for acceptable quality. Beginners sometimes assume quality means perfection everywhere, but governance aligns quality controls to priorities by focusing effort where errors would cause the most harm. Quality also intersects with risk, because poor quality can lead to misbilling, incorrect compliance reporting, or flawed security decisions based on bad data. Aligning quality governance with GEIT means leaders understand quality as a risk and value issue, not as an internal data team concern. When quality controls are outcome-linked, they are more likely to be funded and followed. This is how information governance supports enterprise priorities rather than becoming an isolated discipline. Retention and disposal controls also must match enterprise priorities because retention is a trade-off between value and risk. Keeping information longer can support legal obligations, audits, and long-term analytics, but it increases exposure and cost, especially for sensitive data. If the enterprise prioritizes privacy and risk reduction, retention periods may be shorter and disposal discipline may be stronger while still meeting legal requirements. If the enterprise prioritizes deep historical analysis, retention may be longer, but governance must strengthen controls around archival, access, and monitoring to manage increased exposure. Beginners might assume retention is a legal checklist, but retention is also a strategic choice within constraints, and GEIT alignment ensures it is treated as such. Disposal is especially important because failure to dispose creates hidden risk that grows quietly, and it undermines trust in governance because policies exist but are not executed. Aligning retention and disposal with GEIT means these controls are visible to leadership through reporting and are enforced through lifecycle processes, not left to ad hoc decisions. When retention and disposal match priorities, the enterprise can defend its choices and manage both risk and value deliberately. Measurement and reporting are how alignment stays real over time, because priorities can shift and controls can drift if they are not monitored. GEIT relies on performance and risk indicators to guide decisions, and information governance should provide similar indicators for data controls. These indicators might reflect classification compliance, access review completion, data quality trends, retention and disposal compliance, and incident trends related to data exposure. The key is that reporting should translate technical data governance facts into leader-understandable signals about risk and value, such as whether the enterprise's most critical data assets are well controlled and whether analytics can be trusted. Beginners might wonder why this reporting matters, and the answer is that leaders can only align controls to priorities if they can see whether controls are working. Reporting also supports accountability by revealing where ownership and stewardship are effective and where gaps persist. When governance and information governance share measurement language, alignment becomes easier because decisions are made from a shared view of reality. Over time, measurement turns alignment into a continuous practice rather than a one-time design. Aligning information governance with GEIT also requires cultural alignment, because controls that match priorities must be understood and accepted by the people who handle data daily. If the enterprise prioritizes speed but governance communicates only restriction, people will see controls as obstacles and will bypass them. If the enterprise prioritizes trust but governance communicates only convenience, people may underestimate risk and mishandle sensitive information. Cultural alignment means communicating why controls exist in terms of enterprise outcomes, such as protecting customers, enabling reliable analytics, and preventing operational disruption. It also means making the safe path the easy path, so compliance does not require heroic effort. Beginners should understand that governance controls are only real when they shape behavior, and behavior is shaped by clarity, incentives, and practical processes. When information governance is aligned with enterprise priorities, communication becomes simpler because the reason behind controls is consistent with what leaders already emphasize. This reduces confusion and increases adoption, which is essential for controls to actually work. As we close, aligning information governance with GEIT so data controls match enterprise priorities means using the enterprise's governance logic, value, risk, and constraints to design and operate data controls that are both protective and enabling. Controls must be calibrated to what the enterprise cares about most, whether that is trust, compliance, resilience, speed, or analytic insight. And those controls must be integrated into strategic planning so they support growth rather than lag behind it. Ownership and stewardship provide the decision pathways that keep controls timely and context-aware, while measurement and reporting keep value and risk visible so leaders can adjust as priorities change. For brand new learners, the key takeaway is that data governance fails when it is disconnected from enterprise priorities, because then controls feel arbitrary and behavior becomes inconsistent. When data controls match priorities, the enterprise can use information confidently, protect what matters most, and make decisions based on trustworthy data without creating hidden risk. That is how information governance becomes a core part of enterprise governance rather than a separate set of rules that people only remember during audits or incidents.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.